we were just talking about some beliefs about self and how we learn as mammals. The good news about being a mammal on the top of the food chain is that we've inherited a brain that is well adapted to surviving in a Paleolithic world where the fight or flight syndrome that leans towards flight is very successful, because there's almost no creatures other than maybe the tortoise that we can beat, reliably in hand to hand. So there's a lot of tigers out there. So we've adapted a mind as primates to anticipate danger and respond to it quickly without thinking in order to survive. Because if you're the monkey in a group of monkeys and you're walking along and suddenly you have a feeling of certainty that there's a tiger in the bush and you jump into the tree, but there's no tiger, the other monkeys laugh at you, so then you feel shame and stupid and emotions, but you're alive. And then one time out of 100, there's a tiger in there and you're in the tree and he eats the other monkeys and you get to reproduce, which is a good thing. And so now run that times 10 million years of evolution, or however long it is, a long time. And we developed this brain that is adapted towards responding to intuitions and filling in the gaps on patterns and responding quickly and decisively. And the brain, a 7 or 8 pound piece of meat in your head that produces chemicals in response to environmental stimulus, generates behaviors that, when you translate that to digital trading in the modern world, may not be optimal for success in the market. And I hope that continues to be the case, because using the power of statistics and unnatural technique anyway, and math, you automatically have an edge if you can bring a statistical view of herd behavior to the market, and you can act in risk-managed ways, reliably and repetitively, systematically. You have developed an approach to the market that will automatically give you an edge against the herd. So what I'm describing with this is sort of how the herd mind works and how our brain works. And so rather than trying to control it, that's like trying to control your emotions. Let me know how that works. The emotion, you're already feeling it. It's already having an effect by the time you even recognize it. Now, you can, through self-study and mindfulness, observe the physiological signals that tell you a stress event or an emotional event is coming, and you can prepare yourself to manage it or respond to it or put jujitsu on it and deal with it without letting it throw you off your center, instead of being surprised by it when it happens, then acting in non-rule-based ways, right? I may be the only person in this room that has ever acted against my own rules because of some moment that happened, and I find myself doing something. Like when we get to the washout pattern, I was doing some day trading and I found myself buying something and I didn't know why, and then I realized, oh, this was my swing trade washout pattern, which I've looked at 10,000 times, but there it was on intraday charts, on 3-minute charts, and it looked right, and so I knew I was supposed to buy it, so I bought it. But I hadn't intentionally done that, but I'd been trained by myself to buy that without thinking. So then I learned something about myself in that moment. Managed the trade, got to know Lowe's as quickly as I could, and then tried to figure out what was going on, and wrote about that in my learning journal. Said, investigate the application of swing trade patterns to intraday trading, and the other way. So those are just some beliefs about self. And I've talked a little bit of beliefs about market, and I'm going to talk a little bit about systems in the sense that they are, if we think about pure mechanical systems, where we can code all the rule set, and it's a closed environment, and it can be robo-traded. At the other end of the spectrum, the trader is the system, and it's how I feel today and what I'm doing, and I'm responding to the environment, and I'm just trading the way I feel, man, the pure artist, if you will. Pure science maybe on the other end. And there's a continuum in there. All of those can be effective, So we'll think a little bit about those. It seems to me that what we want to do is somehow bring these domains into alignment, and that when I am prepared and I have aligned myself with a system that fits me psychologically, meaning that I can trade it without thinking or having angst at every decision moment at some cost to me, and I'm trading in markets that are appropriate for that system and which I find comfortable and easy, that I'm in a sweet spot where self, system, and market have aligned. I propose that when we are in that zone, we should do well, and if we don't do well, it's because we misunderstand something about self, system, and market, and now we can investigate the difference between what I thought was happening and what's actually happening, so we get some evidence. So if you find yourself in this area, this is where you understand yourself and you have a system that's designed to fit you and that you feel very comfortable trading, but you're not getting good results because it's not the kind of a market in which that system gets good results. You can spend a lot of time trading a system exactly according to the rules that you love that system, and it's losing money. And so if you define professionalism and success as I follow my rules and +1 to me, but you get negative results, one of those things is not working right, you know. That doesn't work so well. So what you have to figure out now is, how do maybe I have to modify this or this so that it now trades only when it's aligned with the market. Maybe I need a deeper understanding or new rules in that system in order to bring it into alignment with the market. Like, only trade the channeling system when price is above the 200-day moving average, because then I have a professional advantage. Don't trade it when the price is below the 200-day, because it doesn't work as much. Same system, same self, but I need now to add a filter, so I got to modify that system to bring it in alignment with the market. You could be in here, where there is a system that works in this kind of market, but I can't trade it. I have to tinker with the rules, or I wait for more confirmation, or I go too early, or I'm trading too large, or whatever it may be. And so now there is something in that relationship between you and the system that's got to change in order to get good results. You either got to stop trading it because you can't align, or examine your own beliefs, or find the root cause that is making you act outside of the rules. And so there are times when acting outside of the rules is proper. If I have treated that as an intentional act, said, I want to explore how this tweak to the system rules works going forward, and these are the conditions that I'm going to test it with, and now let me see what the evidence is, and I gather enough evidence to be able to make a statement about that idea, and I trade that at a level of risk that allows me to stay in the game, that I'm not betting the farm, or I'm not trading at a production level when I'm really just at the hypothetical level. Then violating the rules is allowed because it's under controlled conditions. Check or hold. So when I say check or hold, what I mean is, this is a throwback to the old Army days when, before we had mortar ballistic computers to compute firing solutions, we had guys with slide rules, but slide rules big and bulky, so we had it on a little whiz wheel, and we would have two guys, each with his own whiz wheel, and I would be reading the firing data off to you. You guys would manipulate, and you would come up with the number so that we could put that onto the mortar to shoot high explosives in proximity of guys that we like, to kill guys that we don't like. And so those guys are betting their lives on us being correct. And so I give you both firing data, and you independently compute. You say 17, check or hold. If you come up with 17, check. If you don't come up with 17, you say hold, and then we reset and run both, because the probability that both of them are wrong identically is so small that we're willing to bet his life on the process. And he's willing to bet his life on the process, right? So when I say check or hold, what I'm really saying is, did what I just say connect with you? And if so, we can move on. But hold, need more explanation, just launch. So if you see me pausing, I'm really listening. All I really need to hear is hold. and feel free to jump in with us. So, check or hold on that? Check. Okay. All right. Cool. I'll make Mortarman out of you yet. This is good. That's what happens when you're over here. The system should work and does work in that market, but I can't trade it, so now I got to figure out what needs to change in the system or myself so that I can now get in alignment and check it out. And then I can vary rules if I approach it mindfully and do that intentionally, but not as opposed to, oh, fear or greed is causing me to respond to that. If you do that, then you are a herd animal moving to the butcher shop. So that's just what you are. I mean, no, you're still a good person, but you're going to be fleeced. Or you're a wildebeest running away from that lion into the pack of lions that are waiting to eat you. Or I guess they're not a pack. I guess they'd be a pride of lions. So we want to act intentionally because some of the best gold mines are found right next to pretty good gold mines. And it's by testing the area around that we find where the more gold is. So we want to test at the boundaries of systems to expand the range and region of our edge. That means I got to know what my edge is. If my edge is a mechanical system that works properly in that market, then it's not stupid to test around that to see if I vary some parameters. Do I improve performance, and which way can I move that system to get more of the market? That would be sensible. So if we're going to vary the rules, and let's do that intentionally and structure it as a hypothesis and gather evidence and then analyze that, not while we're in the trade experiencing the moments of fear and greed, but as a disinterested scientist that can. Now, if you can do that, then you have an edge, because you have a procedural edge that will allow you to continue to adapt and evolve systems to a dynamic market. So the system acts as a way to gather value, to harvest gains from the market. The results also give you information about the market and tells you how well aligned they are. So when we think about ourselves as scientists or artists, and we're finding our sweet spot on there, if you're a scientist approach and you believe in the power of rules and taking yourself out of the system, that's fine, but you're always in the system because you're the one that chose the rules to follow. So you're part of that. If you're the artist and says, rules, art, just recognize that somewhere inside you is a rule set that's leading you to act. And are you acting because of what you had for breakfast or what you heard from the last phone call? And is that working or not working? Or you might be a mix of I think of myself as a discretionary trader with rule-based tendencies. And I'm also a rule-based trader with discretionary tendencies, because sometimes I start with a system that's documented and then I test around the edges based on moments of insight that I want to explore. And then other times I observe myself trading in a visual now state, a flow state, and when I gather enough evidence on how that's going and I can see are there trends, what's working, what's not working, can I inductively produce a set of rules that replicate that trading style and turn that into a action learning approach to trading. So Mark McDowell, who you get a chance to meet later, graduate of the Super Trader program, good friend of mine, full-time money manager, smart guy, followed me through the trading room for about a year and a half. We were trying to turn my trading practice into refined rules that could be coded and tested. In the result of doing that, we carved away a lot of things that weren't working and gained some insights into intraday trading and swing trading from that discipline, from that process. And we call it ready, fire, aim, because that's what we used to do in the Cold War. We were trying to kill thousands of enemy tanks, and we didn't have enough tanks to fight each tank with another tank. That's expensive. But what we had was long-distance wire-guided missiles that had little packets of explosives on the outside of the missile that had wires attached to the viewfinder, and that when I scanned to the left, little packets on the back of the rocket would fire, tick, 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 and that would nudge the missile that way. Each little explosion would push the back end this way, and then the rocket would adjust. And then if I looked up in the sky, the ones on the bottom would fire, or top would fire, would go up. And so I can't shoot at the tank where he is. I have to shoot at the tank where he's going to be, but I know where he's going to be because it's 5 seconds time of flight, and at 50 miles an hour, he could be within a circular area of... So the chances are I'm not going to pick the spot he's going to be at. But what I can do is I can be ready to shoot in that open area. If he comes out into this open area, I know that he can't leave that open area during the time of flight of the missile. So all I got to do is get him in the circle, shoot the missile, and then wherever he goes, just keep watching him, and the missile will adjust onto him. So I'm ready, then I fire it, and then I aim it into him. And so I can now act successfully under conditions of uncertainty using adjustments. In the same way that if I'm walking point for an infantry platoon at night through enemy territory, I'm ready, and then I learn as I go. I'm listening for evidence, then based on what I see and sense, I can adjust the path that we're going to take based on what happens after we've crossed the line of departure. We're into the trade. So in some sense, when we talk about managing a trade, after you've entered, the entry conditions may be appropriate to enter because on a probabilistic basis, we know that this is the kind of start point that over time favors us, and we may find ways to manage trades in the middle of the trade that as the market changes and as the trade unfolds, it looks more like this kind of a trade than that kind of a trade, and then we can take adaptive responses to it as we go. And so the entry is not as important then in that scenario as the adjustments that we make and then the exit that we finally take. That turns out to be much more important than trying to improve the rule set on the front end to give you the magic trade that always works. It turns out so far that doesn't really help. What I need is a robust framework that allows me to get in when things are generally going my way and then respond through management through time and adjust to the market and steer it towards victory or protect it against disaster. So ready, fire, aim. Those are some beliefs I have about how I can maybe make some adjustments to self and system to follow a moving market. If I think the market is how I just described, that open, complex, adaptive system, maybe what I want are systems that can adapt to the change while I'm in the trade, as opposed to trying to predict where the market's going to be in 5 days. Now, it can be done, but this is a different kind of a system that I would say. So we can think of these systems as being open or adaptive. We can think of them as being closed. If we can describe the conditions under which we make the adjustment decisions, I may be able to code that and move from art towards science and continue to ratchet up our success. So one of the things I find myself doing is as I'm in the trade and I have some feelings about what's going on, I make decisions, I record that in my trading journal and say, this is why I did that. Here's what I considered in the moment with the information available. Now let's see how the results go. If I can gather 30 data points, I can now judge whether or not my trading intuition or my trading decision is adding value. So we can now think of this idea of a trader quality number. Let's suppose that I prefer mechanical systems because I am science dominated and I have some rules that allow it to align with the market when it should be profitable, like trade when it's oversold on a daily basis using Williams %R and the price is still above the 200-day moving average. That's the channeling system. Those are the two rules. So I'll buy tomorrow's open and then I will sell it when the exit criteria is hit. So I've got this closed loop system and I can robo-trade that. And let's say that the let's say in the mechanical form of that system, maybe there's 30 trades, 1 through 30, and each little result is what it is. And it ends up with something like, let's say, plus 10R. And then let's say in this one where I add discretion, I add trading discretion, and I make some changes and the net result is maybe 13R or 7R. The difference was in the insertion of me as an active player. Boy, I couldn't say that more clumsily if I tried. Let me see if I can. I'll try to say it clumsily. The difference between the robot results and my results is what I brought to the table, trying to override and make some judgments. Check or hold? Okay. So if I can describe the results of this pure system here in terms of SQN, or system quality number, which is the average result divided by the standard deviation of the result. So I want the average result to be positive, so I have a positive expectancy system. And I want the standard deviation to be small so that it is more reliable. It's a machine that produces standardized results like a brick-making machine. That's what I want. So if the larger the average gain, or the average result, and the smaller the standard deviation, the more reliable it becomes, the higher the system quality number. Check or hold? All other things being equal, and they never are, we would like high levels of SQN because it gives you more confidence about the repeatability, the reliability of that system. Now, if I take the difference between my discretionary system and the mechanical system, I can attribute the difference to something I think of as trader quality number. And that is, on average, over time, with a large enough data set to have some confidence in it, am I adding value to the system or am I not adding value? If I'm adding value to the system, then I should keep doing that. And it may reward me to figure out, well, what am I doing that seems to be adding the value? Is that, why did I make that decision at that time? What were the things that I considered? I got to go to the book. I got to go to the training. Why did I do that? Oh, here was the situation, and that's what I was thinking about at the time. And if you didn't record that at the moment of decision, your monkey brain will set you up for failure, because what we remember are our memories of the thing and not the thing. And here's how we know that. Science tells us that. A psychologist in New York had a group of graduate students on 9/11, and the second plane went into the tower, and he asked them, write down everything you remember about this day. A year later, he got them, and he says, now, write down everything you remember about that day. They did. That's Journal 2. Now compare Journal 1 to Journal 2, and what do you find? In every case, significant differences between what they wrote in the moment and what they remembered about that moment. And then he asked them the important question. Now, having seen the evidence of your own eyes, which one do you believe in more? Journal 2. In fact, they believed in Journal 2 more after they'd seen the cognitive dissonance and the difference in Journal 1. That they had a certain belief in Journal 2. Say, well, that's what I remembered. I believe that at 90% confidence. That's really what happened. Oh, but here's Journal 1, and that's significantly different than what you wrote in Journal 2. What do you think now? Oh, I still think Journal 2 is what happened, and now I am more confident, having seen disconfirming evidence. The monkey mind, the primate mind, acts just in that way. It is replicated in hundreds of experiments that says contrary evidence drives you to believe more confidently in what you already believed. Politics. This is my guy. Yeah, but he did that. This is really my guy. Because I attribute evil motives to you, and you're obviously trying to spin me away from a guy, and now I'm going to believe in this, and I don't even like you. That's why. And so I'm manufacturing evidence, manufacturing reasons to feel more strongly about something on the basis of emotional state of mind generated by this 7 pound of meat, this organ in my head that is a biochemical thing that generates feelings. So the book is Robert Burton on feeling certain, and he describes the neuroscience of how the brain has evolved to generate emotional states of feeling confident in order that you can act without thinking, even when there may not be a basis for actually believing in what you feel so confident about. It's important that I feel confident that I know there's a tiger in the bush so that I can jump without thinking instead of, well, let me go see if there really is a tiger in that bush. Well, over time, that's not good survival behavior. And so you've inherited a brain that morphs the memories and generates feelings that are not necessarily aligned with the world. The scientific method and that whole approach is a relatively late comer to the party that is inside our head. And so if you can recognize that, if you can distinguish between beliefs and facts and feelings about those beliefs and know how your own brain works, you can now set up some rules and procedures and routines that allow you to account for it, not necessarily well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my brain so that I don't feel those emotions. Yeah, okay, let me know how that works. Or you can just say, no, I come to the table with this thing that generates, but I can separate the feelings, and the impulse to act. I can act according to intentions. I can learn to trust those feelings as signal events to something special happening that I haven't sorted out yet. Something just fired inside me, and I don't know why. So just let me note it and see what happens, and let me come back to that and see what the results. This is what I felt like I wanted to do, but I didn't do it. Well, if I had done that, what happens? Collect 30 of those. Maybe there's something in there that says you're seeing something at the subconscious level that now raised itself to bring to your attention, but you didn't have an intentional rule for yet, so you did the right thing. Record it, study it, come to a sensible analytical response to it, and if it adds value, adjust your rules. Learn from that, and then trust that your brain is sending you signals that you can elect to act on or not. So that commitment to action is important. Inside of me, there's a 12-year-old kid who is very curious and wants to trade all the time and sees things. I could trade that. And that ready, fire, aim, this is Mark in the back, by the way. He suffered through a year and a half of ready, fire, aim, trying to figure out what exactly is going on in your head when you do those things. And so we're trying to find out what those signals are, and that's the process you go through. What's adding value, what's not adding value. And so you should know what the robotic implementation system quality number and results are for systems. And then when you find yourself desiring to make changes, say, why do I want to make that change? What's the belief it's connected to? What's the evidence in support of that belief? Why should it add value? Let me try that under controlled circumstances to see if it does add value, and let me gather enough evidence and information to make a sound, professional judgment about whether or not to start acting on it. And then, if it passes those tests, let me prototype trade that thing forward and see if it trades forward the way that it seems to trade in back testing and in paper trading. Let me trade it forward, and then as it earns money, let me increase my position size from prototyping to full production on the merits that it earned it. I'm willing to let it do that because I'm not confident that my beliefs are any good anyway. So I'm willing to trust the evidence, and I just need enough beliefs to start investigating. But I also know that the belief comes from this monkey mind plus this analytical framework. So when you find yourself in the middle of this stuff, you say, well, this intuition that I have, I wouldn't have trusted 10 years ago because 10 years ago my intuition led me astray. But now after 10 years of systematically measuring my response to the market based on intuition, I'm getting better. So now when I get the intuition, should I trust it or should I discard it? Am I more like I am now than I was 10 years ago? Or am I more like the intuitive trader I'm going to be? When I'm in the middle of that step, how do I do? Well, That's where you got to identify the idea, record it, test it, and then provisionally accept it, and then study the results as you go forward to say, it still seems to be working, I can scale up on the basis of results, but never to the point where I'm betting the farm. Because if you remember what Ed Thorpe says, the guy who wrote Beat the Dealer, and who was a mathematician at MIT, and whose trading partner was Claude Shannon, who invented information theory and allowed us to have smart objects, and who are the two greatest hedge fund managers in the world ever. He says, if you ever take a risk where there is a mathematical probability, however small, that you will go bankrupt, then it's just a matter of time. You will eventually draw that card. I think back to Major Robert Rogers of Rogers Rangers in the 1700s, who was writing rules for Rangers, and he said, rule number 1, don't forget nothing. Number 2, don't never take a risk you don't have to. And I try to live by those 2 rules. The other rules are pretty good too. You know, keep your musket and your hatchet clean and sharp, and your powder dry, and be ready to march in a minute's notice. I try to live by that too. So I say all that simply to say that there is some art and science and craft work involved up in that circle of self. You're part of that, even if you opt for, at the production level, using mechanical systems, robotically traded, you've still made a choice that is connected to who you are as a person, and you should account for that. And so, Dr. Mintzberg from Canada, Canada, says, we spend a lot of time as managers and leaders thinking about the science versus the art. You know, the rule-based objective and the subjective intuitive, and say, where should I be and all that. He says management, and he doesn't distinguish between management and leadership, because if you got leaders that don't know how to manage, the guy's dreaming up some stuff that can't possibly be realized, and that's like following the Pied Piper. Eventually that goes bad. And if you have a manager who doesn't have leadership qualities, he doesn't understand the big picture and the people, and he really is not he doesn't have a complete sociological insight into what's going on. Probably a poor manager. What he says is that in every case where we've got to make a decision that's important, there is some trade-off between science and art in it. And each one of those is a case study. And eventually, over time, if you get that approximately right and learn from it and get better, you end up developing craft or practical knowledge about how to survive and thrive in the world in this kind of a situation, and that you only get that through doing and reflecting and thinking about it. And so he adds craft to this notion of managerial or leadership proficiency. And so if we use maybe something like, a trading journal or a learning journal to think about each of those cases, not only just as a trade, but also as a case study about trading and who we are and what our system is, we might be able to abstract some lessons learned up in there. And so then we might be able to approach our trading practice from this basis, that sometimes we act in order to learn, and we study the results, and it becomes one of many case studies. And other times we can have a theory of how the market works, maybe a system or an approach, and we derive some principles and some rules, and we test that, and we trade it, and we get a case study, and we learn. So whether we are bottoms-up inductive learning or top-down deductive learning, we end up generating a lot of evidence, and then maybe through classifying and studying, we can generate systems that we have an appreciation for the theory behind it and also the practical results, and we can turn that into effective action. So, am I a rule-based system trader? Yeah. Do I use discretion? Yeah. How do I do it? One trade at a time, and I know where I am, and I know why I'm trading it, and I know what I'm testing, and I'm darn sure that I trade it at a level of risk that's appropriate for how much experience and evidence that I have. And as I get better, the amount of risk per trade I take gets smaller as a percentage of portfolio, and then I try to trade more often because I want to be like the house. I want to trade I want to play 1,000,000 hands of blackjack at $1 a piece rather than one hand of blackjack for $1,000,000. Because I know where my edge is in the law of large numbers if I have a positive expectancy system with smaller standard deviations. So I say all that to simply say, as we think about self, system, and market, this is sort of the context of doing this. There's not, that I know of, a magic bullet that says this is what you should do and that should work for the next 50 years. I mean, really? That's a 50-year bet. I'm not going to make that bet because I don't have to. I don't have to take that risk. I think it's more like open adaptive systems in the market and I can respond to it, and if I can be mindful and present and study evidence, I can adapt in time to not get stampeded by the herd or eaten by lions, something like that.